Hi, everyone. Welcome to the episode 6 of the Woman to Follow show, and I'm really excited to be here. My name is Rose Horowitz. I'm a Pulitzer-nominated journalist and the founder of Woman to Follow. And I'm very excited tonight because we have a really special guest who has an incredible story. We have Dr. Cassandra Quave with us, and she is an ethnobotanist who teaches at Emory University and has just come out. The book is not out yet. It will be out next week, and it's called The Plant Hunter. Before I say that, I'll just tell you just a tiny bit about Woman to Follow, which is that I started a hashtag trend a few years ago that had 12 million impressions in the first 2 weeks. And I followed that by writing profiles. And now I'm doing a Woman to Follow show on live stream. So please follow me on Twitter, and you can see the show on Facebook, on Twitter, and on my YouTube channel. And subscribe to my YouTube channel would be great. And now I want to welcome Dr. Quave. Hi, Dr. Quave. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Rose. It's great to see you.
Great to see you. I just can't keep up with your Twitter account of all the podcasts and TV shows that you've been on. So very honored that you can join us. You have a really incredible story to tell.
Well, thank you. I think this is a really important hashtag that you started there. It's great to follow these women.
Terrific. I just want to tell everybody a little about you. Dr. Quave is the curator of Emory University's Herbarium and associate professor at Emory University. Her research is supported by the National Institute of Health. She focuses on analyzing natural plant-based medicine to help combat infectious disease and antibiotic resistance. She is the co-founder and CEO of PhytoTEK LLC, a drug discovery company. Quave is co-director and host of a podcast, Foodie Pharmacology. She has authored more than 100 scientific publications and been featured in the New York Times Magazine, among many others. As a person born with multiple, we'll talk about her background, and I think we'll just start there. So really, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit how you got started liking science, about what happened when you were born and how your interest grew in science.
Yeah, so I have a bit of a rough start to life. I was born with multiple congenital birth defects of my skeletal system, which was quite a surprise both to the doctors and to my parents, because this is in a time when you didn't have regular ultrasounds to kind of track pregnancies. And so when I was born, I was missing bones in my leg. So my fibula, which is that bone that kind of goes along your calf muscle, was totally missing. I had multiple bones in my foot that were missing. My tibia, which is the bone in the front of your lower part of your leg, was very short. And then my thigh bone or my femur was very short. And so they were kind of these abnormal, deformities that I had that really made walking almost an impossibility for me, had they not decided to proceed with an amputation at the age of 3. And I don't know how much we want to get into this now. I can talk a little bit.
I guess I read most of your book, but I think your mom, you were 3. I think we might have a picture of you in your crib, or a picture of you as a baby. So in this picture, I think what happened, it seems from what I can gather in your book, that after your surgery, your knee was wrapped up, and your mom came in to check on you in your bedroom, and she said, there's a terrible smell. And
this picture shows, this is post amputation. So again, the reason they amputated was because my bones were so deformed. Had I tried to walk, even with orthotic devices, I would have been subjected to many recurrent breaks. So it wasn't really a viable means to go forward. And so
you were growing at the same time, I guess, as these bones were not developing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And so with the prosthetic device or the prosthetic leg, the idea would be that I would be able to walk with much greater ease. Again, this is in a time, this is in the very early 80s. I was born in 1978. I had my amputation when I was 3 years old. And so prosthetics weren't that advanced. Most of the prosthetic technologies advanced around, really as a consequence of the Vietnam War, of servicemen and women that came back and had, suffered limb loss. But the technology was really far behind back then. They were very heavy, very hard to walk, and caused a lot of pain and irritation to the skin, which led to other problems later on for me. But when I was 3 and I had this amputation, I acquired a hospital-acquired infection, which is something that many people, unfortunately, this happens to still today, that you may go in for surgery, and because of a number of different reasons, you can acquire different infections at the surgical site. And in my case, the infection became quite advanced. I was sent home, the infection advanced, and I had to be rushed back. And so as a result, they had to cut my bone even shorter. I lost a lot of tissue as a result of that. And, that's really the reason I'm not an Olympian runner, right? Is because I don't have that thick layer of padding under my bone like most amputees do during a normal amputation procedure. So it's just kind of bone and scar tissue for me. But that later cascaded, as I explain in the book, into some of my choices, into the areas of research that I ultimately decided to pursue.
I think Stefan, my producer, was just showing us. I saw that you were a poster child for, and that is, I guess, post all that, after you were 4 or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this might be pre-amputation.
Oh, okay.
I'm wearing an orthotic device with a very thick sole in
Okay.
that. But I mean,
Mhm.
absolutely. I mean, it was a very difficult time for
Yeah.
my parents. My father had his small business. My mother was a school teacher who works with children with learning disabilities. I mean, they were not a wealthy couple, and my surgical bills over the years added up to quite a lot. I mean, I had, on average, at least one surgery a year until I turned 18. And these were major. It wasn't just my leg. It also, I had other problems with my hip and with my spine. I developed a really severe form of scoliosis that was starting to crush my internal organs. So I've been built and rebuilt. I tell everyone I'm the $1 million woman, because really I have huge
Superwoman. Yeah.
orthopedic surgeons that made it possible for me to live the life that I do live today. I mean, it's really incredible what they were able to accomplish with these surgeries.
Well, that's awesome. And how did you develop a love for science? Because I saw, there were many pictures that you sent of you winning science fairs. So,
Yeah, so that's a great question. So if you can envision this, every year I'm basically going through a surgery. Often these were due to bone spurs, where my bone would basically grow out of the skin. It sounds really gross. It was gross. It was also very painful. And so they would have to go and revise the stump every year. And as a result, I spent a lot of time in crutches. Some of the advantages there were I was really, really strong as a kid. I had very strong upper body strength. I mean, I could out arm wrestle any boy, at least until they hit puberty, and then it was all over. But I used to have really great upper body strength. But because of being on crutches, I spent a lot of time kind of in nature. I grew up in South Florida. My parents were the kind that really encouraged us to be outside. Basically, our ideas, when we woke up on a Saturday morning, we had, about 30 minutes of cartoons, and it was out the door, and we came back at lunch.
okay.
So I was always outside, and just was fascinated from an early age with watching nature, with observing it, whether it was me sitting in a tree and kind of looking at bromeliads and insects or birds. And as I got older, and in the 3rd grade, my mom brought home a microscope. And that really opened up this entire other world to me. And I started looking at pond water, and I started looking at what was swimming around inside my dog's saliva or my saliva. or my horse's saliva, right? So I was just really fascinated with observing things and trying to understand what there was behind kind of the veil of the hidden world.
Okay. And what happened? Did you know what you wanted to be when you were 10 or 15?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's not unexpected that I wanted to be like my heroes. My heroes were my physicians that had, really been the people that had tremendous life-changing impact on me as a person, on me as a developing child, on my mind. I always ask them questions about, science and things like that. So I really felt like I was destined for medicine, and I remained in that mindset until really until my senior year of college.
And where did you go to school?
So I went to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, which is
Yeah.
where I teach today. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And what happened in your senior year? I think Stefan may have some pictures. But you went to Peru? Is that, oh, well, wrong picture, but it's a science fair. Okay.
Be working on E.
Okay.
coli in high
Yeah.
school. There we are. We're in Peru. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I was very much hardwired towards wanting to go into medicine to become a surgeon myself. That was kind of my goal. I wanted to help children like me. And in college, I was taking all the pre-medical coursework, so all the hardcore biology and chemistry and physics and calculus and all these kind of, heavy root memorization courses. But I also fell in love with the field of anthropology while I was in college, which was something, growing up in a small town. We didn't have internet back then, by the way, too. This is in the 90s. I just got my first email address when I went to college. And so, I'd never even heard of anthropology. And all of a sudden, I was reading books and learning about different cultures, about different systems of medicine, about how different people perceive health. The idea of what health is to one culture can be very different from what it is in another culture, or the practice of medicine. I was raised under this idea that medicine was only surgery and pharmacy, cut or drug, right? And so when I was taking this course in tropical ecology, that's when I first read a book that kind of opened my eyes to the field of ethnobotany. I never heard of ethnobotany before, even while taking all these anthropology courses. This is very late in my college career when it was first introduced. And it was just one of those light bulb moments for me where it really kind of merged together the fields that I've been so passionate about around medicine, biology, drug discovery, healing, but under this other lens of nature. And so when an opportunity came up, I mean, I leapt at it to go to the Amazon, and I stayed there for 6 weeks in the first trip. That was in the summer before my senior year. And then I was able to raise some grant money. I was awarded a grant from the school to go back and conduct an actual research project over the winter break of that same senior year. And this is the gentleman we have shown in on the screen right now. This is Don Antonio Montero Pisco, and he was an amazing man, an incredible healer, a great teacher, and just a treasured friend for me. And he's the one that really helped me take what I'd learned in the classroom and what I observed also while volunteering in the emergency department as a teenager. I was really immersed in medicine all the time, but he opened me up to this whole other way of seeing the connectivities between nature and health, and really helped me kind of decide to take this other path.
Okay. Well, since many of us who are not in that field don't know what ethnobotany is, can you tell us what do you do? What does that mean? And is that today still a small, field in the world of science?
Yeah, that's a great question. So ethnobotany has been defined as the science of survival. At its fundamental kind of core of ethnobotany, it's all about understanding and documenting and studying the ways that people relate to plants, right? So whether it is relation to plants in terms of food acquisition, or the use of plants for clothing, or for medicine, or for music or art, or all the different myriad ways that we use these natural resources to enrich our lives. Now, I've decided to subspecialize in the field of medical ethnobotany because that's really where my passion is, in medicinal plants. But it also kind of crosses over a bit into foods as well. I've done a lot of work in the field looking at wild foods. I'm fascinated with this idea between the food medicine continuum of where does food stop and medicine begin? Because sometimes a food plant can also be used as a medicine. When it comes to how common this is, I guess, across science, there aren't that many ethnobotanists out there. One of my goals of this book is to really raise awareness around the field because it is so incredibly useful, the tools and the skills that ethnobotanists have, because they are able to work in an interdisciplinary setting to understand both the human aspects and the environmental aspects to these human nature interface. And in a time of climate change and biodiversity loss and cultural loss, language loss, we've never needed people with these skills more.
Okay. Tell us a little how you, as an ethnobotanist, how you research and how you've researched, at least pre-pandemic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to think about it this way. I don't call myself an expert in any one of the subspecialties that we use in my lab, but I am fluent in the languages of those fields, if that makes sense. So on our team, we have botanists, we have pharmacologists, microbiologists, natural products chemists, people that are more focused on the anthropology side. And what we do is we really bring everyone to the table to address these key issues. And one of the main issues that I'm most passionate about studying right now is the rising tide of antibiotic resistance. And this goes back to those early childhood experiences. I almost died of an infection. Luckily, it was treatable with antibiotics, but had that happened today, I don't know. Because so many of these pathogens have become resistant to antibiotics, and we need to fuel that discovery pipeline. Now, what
Can you
I've
give
learned
us
on
like
the
a
other,
very tiny mini lesson on I think, you talk about
yeah,
that this goes back centuries, that we were using plants, and the big revolution when we did discover penicillin, and what's that, what was, there was a
yeah.
fungus, or, just like I don't know how concise you can make it as a scientist, but
Yeah, of course, of course. So,
thank you.
I mean, I like to look at medicine from a very long timeline. I mean, if we think about the discovery of antibiotics, that really was a game-changing discovery in the history of medicine. But we've only been in the antibiotic era for less than a century. And that's really not long when you think about the many centuries that humans have been treating others and themselves with different natural ingredients. And by the way, many of our antibiotics come from nature as well. They just come from different types of natural sources, not necessarily plants. But we have successfully treated infections over centuries, and still today with plants. The challenge is, of course, determining which plants have the greatest potential to safely and effectively treat disease. There are a lot of plants that can be very effective in a laboratory setting. They can kill the cells that you're trying to kill, but they may also kill you. I mean, and this is one of the biggest challenges is trying to help people to understand that not everything that is natural is safe. There are a lot of things in nature that can be quite poisonous. And so it's finding that balance. And a lot of that balance has been worked out in different systems of traditional medicine.
So when you're researching a plant, do you go back and look at where they were using it, and if anything's been written about it and what they found? Is that something you do?
Absolutely. So we kind of take two approaches. On one hand, we look at documenting current day uses of plants, because this is another misconception I think that many people in the US have, that this idea that botanical medicine is something that's just limited to kind of dietary supplements or kind of herbal teas. They don't think of it necessarily as a serious form of medicine. But the reality is that billions of people across the globe turn to plants as their primary form of medicine. When they have a headache or a stomach ache or a cut or a wound or an infection, they don't go to the pharmacy. They go to what they've already collected and perhaps stored in their attic or stored in the home, or they go out into the garden or into the surrounding village or the forest, and they collect the plants they've been taught are useful for those different indications. Another misconception people often
Don't you
have.
think, I think, people think, well, that's a black magic, or that's, I mean, like you were brought up to know, you
Yeah,
said medicine, surgery and drugs. That was,
yeah,
two things you knew. And that whole world of how plants can be used to heal was not something that was in your purview, at all.
yeah. I mean, I think you're right in some senses. In some senses, I did learn how to use aloe leaf gel as a child to treat my burn wounds because I was always getting into trouble and like scraped up. But I think it's important again to have a history lesson here. Many people forget that, a lot of our fundamental medications came originally from plants. Plants are the keepers of the blueprints of many of the drugs that we consider to be pharmaceutical drugs today. So one that many in the audience may be familiar with is aspirin. Aspirin was discovered, from willow bark and also from a little herb known as meadowsweet. We have many of our, incredibly important anti-cancer drugs that come from plants, from Taxol, from the Pacific Yew, and we have, etoposide from the mayapple. We have camptothecin from the Chinese happy tree. When we think about malaria, cinchona bark was incredibly important as a source of quinine to battle malaria. And just a few years ago, the Nobel Prize was awarded to Dr. Tu Yu, who discovered artemisinin from the sweet wormwood plant and has been used to save, I don't know how many millions of people's lives.
That's a woman.
It's a woman, yes, from malaria. Yeah, an incredible woman. And she's one of the rare few that's actually been recognized by the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
There are very few and far between with that
You
particular
wrote about
prize.
why did the Chinese? It happened. Was it during the Viet? How did that come about? That she
It
was
was
sent.
during the, I'm trying to think, it was during the time of the Maoist regime, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what she did that I thought was just a fascinating aspect to her story was, she went back to ancient texts, traditional Chinese medical texts, and looked at what was documented as being used to treat these kind of intermittent fever symptoms that you have with malaria. And they found the wormwood plant, but in typical lab extraction techniques, which often involve types of alcohol to pull out the compounds from the plant, what she found instead, they found activity, but they couldn't get enough of the compound. And going back to these historic texts, she discovered that the way it was traditionally extracted was by steeping it in room temperature water and kind of macerating it in that room temperature water, because the temperature and the solvent it was extracted in was really important. And this is really a key lesson I think that we all have to appreciate. It's not just knowledge of this healer uses this plant. It's this healer collects this plant at this time of day and this time of year. They store it like this. They prepare it like that. They give this much of dosage. All of those are key to really helping us determine what some of the major compounds might be. And the thing that's tricky about the science of botanicals, of course, is that nature doesn't work in a single drug, single target kind of manner. And that's how we like to think about, pharmaceuticals, is we only want it to work on one thing because that's easier for us to understand in all these very complicated clinical trials. But nature often you have a slew of compounds working on many targets to get that end effect. And I think that's really where the future of medicine lies. I think that really we've got to get to the point where we can apply these advanced chemistry tools to look at polypharmacologies of being able to assess these many different types of activities.
Okay. Fascinating. I see Tim Sohn said hello, and we have a question that seems Very good. From Diana in California, who says, great topic. Can you talk about time in nature as a medicine too? The notion of just being in nature is good for you physically and mentally. Can you share what you know about this?
That's such a great question, Diana. Thank you for asking that. You know, there's this trend of forest bathing, of this idea that you go into a forest and kind of just are there, you're present in the forest, you're smelling all those amazing volatile compounds in pine forest. I mean, I don't know where the science is right now on those, but I do know from my own personal lived experience, especially during this period of COVID when, you know, like so many people, I was really isolated for a long time at home, and I felt the lack of nature. For me, spending time in nature, in the woods, again, going back to those childhood delights of just observing and looking and smelling and feeling the world with all of my senses is so incredibly restorative to me. And it's part of, you know, the cycle of what keeps me going. It's just so important for my own personal wellness that I found that I need to spend time in nature. And in fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be heading off with the two fabulous girlfriends of mine, one of which is a National Geographic explorer and the other is an author. And we're going to be exploring Wales, and we'll be in Snowdonia, which is this gorgeous mountain, you know, region with amazing lakes. We're going to be swimming and just immersing ourselves in the wild. And there's just no better thing to do than that, especially with that also appreciate nature.
That's awesome. Of the medicine, I think that there's some figure I think you you cite in your book that there are only 33,000 or 9% of the world's plant species have been used for medicine.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible number. When you think about, we have around 374 to 390,000 species of plants known on Earth, and the fact that humans have figured out sorting through all this, you know, myriad complexity, all this biodiversity, and come up with around 9% of all of those that have some medicinal use, that's just amazing. The challenge, of course, is that from a scientific perspective, we've only really rigorously studied a few hundred of those at most. So there is a huge amount of work to do. And again, that's why I keep beating on this drum is, if you want to study nature, if you're interested in the world, if you're interested in plants and how people relate to them, or you're interested in the future of food security or in the future of medicine, this is the for you. We need people working to really understand all of the different potentials of these plants, not just for medicine, but again, for food and for basically the survival of the human race, because our environment is under threat right now.
And when you set out to do this book, because the book reads as both a memoir of your growing up and how you met your husband, and I think you have 4 children. Am I right?
Yeah.
You do all this and you have 4 children. Okay, that's great. Is also commenting on you know, the science that you're doing and what you're finding, and a warning about the climate. So what do
Absolutely.
you hope, you know, what are your, let's say, 2 or, you know, for top 2 things that you want to get across in the book?
I mean, I think that I chose to tell the book through the lens of memoir because I think it's just a much more accessible way to approach science. So it's really a book about, yes, it's a book about ethnobotany. It's a book about the discovery process. It's also a book about what it's like to become a scientist and what it's like to deal with adversity. And my hope is that even for people that aren't interested in nature, that they can find something in this book to relate with, especially for anyone that identifies as other or different from the norm. Because I think that's really been my identity my entire life, you know, initially, you know, from stemming from my disability, and then later really through navigating a high-paced career as a woman in a very male-dominated field. There are a lot of women that are faculty in universities, but there aren't that many that are faculty that lead their own large research that have that responsibility of training students and running multi-million-dollar budgets. And it's challenging because it's very competitive. And
Is it very rare for, or not, I don't know how rare, but for a woman to have a lab like you do that's funded by the NIH?
I don't know the exact figures on how many women are NIH funded off the top of my head, but I do know that, the majority of, at least in my field, of what we would call principal investigators or PIs are men.
Okay. I just want to read a few words from your story because as a writer, I thought you told this so well. And I'm not a scientist, but I do love plants, such as
Great.
a lot of perennials. But at the heart of science is the unalloyed thrill of discovery. Every plant I seek out during fieldwork is like buried or long lost treasure I'm on the hunt for, the mother lode for this journey. And you really begin the book, out in the field, I think, with your students, and there's a real joy that you express about, when they find something and you say, that's beautiful, that's lovely, or, that's just very real and beautiful. So thank you for writing it that way. I think
Thank you.
someone like me enjoys that.
That's great.
Tell us, you do have a chapter in the book that talks about some of the ways you've been spoken to by men, by male scientists, and I think you have names for them. But I remember there's one. You're at a party, an academic party, which is hard for you to attend because your time is so precious. But you were there, and a male professor or scientist said to you, "Are you so and so's daughter?"
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, what's awful, Rose, is just one of many, many examples. But I thought that this particular story illustrated the issue so well. And I know that there are women that experience very similar things, even if, outside the domains of science. So, and this story, I'm at a recruitment dinner where we're trying to recruit a very talented female scientist to our university. It's not my department, it's another department that I've been invited by. And another professor starts asking me, basically questioning like why I was there. Are you the host's daughter? And I said, no, I'm faculty. Oh, and then instead of recognizing I was faculty, the next question is, well, who do you work for? I said, no, I'm faculty in this department. I have my own team of this many people. And he says, oh, well, where's your husband?
Oh no, it got worse.
Home. Way the best of that. Being an amazing partner.
Okay.
It's just, and it just kept going on until he asked me about my field of expertise. And, and I explained I work in natural products chemistry. This, by the way, Rose, and this sounds very braggadocious, but I have to frame it like this. It's like I'd been in the news that week. Like my face was literally plastered across campus, websites and in the national news. And I'm like riding this amazing high. And I'm so proud of my team, of what they've accomplished. Because in the end, I'm really just a spokesman. I lead their efforts. We work as a team, but it's them in the lab. And so I see my role as really being, there to kind of speak out and communicate that science. And I'm just thrilled with this. And then I go to this event that I'm taking time away from my family to be at, and this is what I'm faced with. And then he began to mansplain my field to me incorrectly.
I'm glad you're here to talk about it, and maybe he's watching, whoever he is.
Maybe more men or others, doesn't have to just be a man. Any of us can fall into this trap of making someone feel unwelcome. I think that assumptions can be dangerous, especially in professional settings. Not to just start questioning people, why are they there, or do they belong there, and then just persisting with disbelief that they are there. That's a problem. Not appropriate.
Okay. Well, I think you've made a future sale.
Great.
Hannah,
I saw a question about Audible.
Yes.
Yeah, I can answer that. It will be available on Tuesday the 19th because My original publication date was going to be October 12th, but because of COVID delays with the printers, we got pushed back 1 week. So the official on sale date will be on October 19th. It'll be available in hardback. It'll be available as Audible. And I actually narrated it, which was a whole other journey. I hope that people like it. It was really hard work. I have such respect now for narrators.
Take a
It'll
long
also
time
be
in the
available.
studio. A long time in the studio.
Yeah, in the studio. It was like a week in the studio, and I had, huge containers of warm herbal tea with, throat coat tea with echinacea and ginger and honey, lots of honey. I just kind of kept drinking the whole time.
That's great. Are there any other, what other kinds of discrimination would you say you face as a woman in the field that you can talk about?
Yeah, again, these unfortunately aren't so unusual for many women. I've had to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace, not at my university, but at other work events. So even at government-sponsored events or scientific conferences, and those are always really challenging to deal with because your first goal is to extricate yourself from the situation, but then you're also faced with the challenge of trying not to insult the perpetrator, right? Especially if it's someone of power, because then if they get insulted and get angry, then that could be someone that comes after you in your career. So it's really this crazy
Or
fine
if it's the
line.
government, they could be holding the purse strings for research that you
Exactly.
want to do.
It could be somebody on a grant review panel or someone that reviews your papers. I mean, it's really challenging. And I've wanted to speak out about it, especially for those that are more junior than me, to know that, like, there has to be better ways. There's also been, bullying behaviors at conferences that I've had to deal with. And, one of the things that I've really tried to do is to advocate with academic societies to establish codes of conduct for behavior. Because when I was more junior, I didn't know what to do. Now that I'm a bit more senior, I feel more comfortable speaking out, but it's still very uncomfortable. It's that balance, but having a reporting structure in place, having a way to deal with really intolerable behavior at meetings is something that's so important. And I hope that, anyone that's involved in an academic society, I hope that you'll check and make sure that those conferences do have some sort of codes in place and a reporting structure for people to use if problems arise.
And are there support groups or particular groups that you can share that you can share this message with, so young people coming into the field know about what you faced and about the codes of conduct that you've tried to
Yeah,
establish?
I provide some links in the book also for academic societies that I think do a great job of this in my field. Of course, not everyone reading the book is going to be, in the field of natural products or ethnobotany, but they can certainly take a look at those codes, especially with the Society for Economic Botany and the American Society of Pharmacognosy. Both fantastic societies that have paid a lot of attention to this. Others have not. I don't name them in the book. They know who they are, and hopefully they'll fix it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I mean, and that's where you also make choices. Like, I intentionally don't go to conferences any longer if they don't have codes of conduct in place. Just as I won't sit on manels either. I mean, we have to, for anyone that has a voice, there's a responsibility to use that voice because there's so many that don't have a voice yet. And so I feel really strongly about that.
And do you, I don't know, just curious, do you use any of the devices? I know there's a nonprofit, Gender Avenger, that has an app that you can use if you go to a conference, to measure that will tell you how many men and how many women and how many people of color.
That's fantastic. I wasn't aware of that.
Okay,
That's great.
well, I'll send you an email with that link.
Yeah.
That group, they're a terrific group, and I think there are a few. There's another group called Female Quotient that they've just partnered with, and they do that in corporations, within
That's
corporations.
great.
So
That's great.
uh,
And you're right. You're right. It's not only about gender. It's also about, ethnicity. It's about disability. I mean, there's so many other ways that we can improve upon diversity in the workplace and in, representation in conferences.
and how is the medical, how have you, have you made that way as a, in what you've done? I mean, maybe we can show some pictures of some of the places you've been that look pretty very adventurous. But I know you've climbed mountains. I mean, is that you're in Italy here?
Yeah. This is in the Agadian island chain. This is in Pantelleria, a little island off the coast of Tunisia. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something I also try and get across in the book is that, if you have a passion with a will, there is a way. You need money to be able to make it happen to you, but that also comes as a consequence of the will. When we're planning international expeditions, number one is I also really, really try whenever we're working internationally to build relationships with scientists in those host countries. And I'm not talking about a short-term relationship. These are relationships that go on for years where we co-author, work together. We try and, help build up research infrastructures through those ongoing collaborations. And when we're planning expeditions, there are special considerations I have to think about. So when it comes to my prosthetic leg, mobility is an obvious challenge for me. Especially as I get older. I mean, I'm in my 40s now. I know that in the next decade or 2 decades, am I going to still be able to do what I can do today? I try and stay fit, but I know I have other challenges that others might not necessarily face in the same way, right? Because of my prosthetic and because of my back and my hip. I mean, it's more than just an amputation. I have chronic pain from these other bone conditions as well. So when I plan a trip, I have to think about, okay, is there a way for us to get as close as possible to the collection sites, whether that's through a vehicle, whether it's through a boat or a canoe, if it's, with a pack of mules, and whatever it is, like, I think that with enough time and preparation and support, having a really supportive team is really key because, I do feel bad if I'm like the one holding everyone up because when we go hiking, I'm pretty slow. The good thing is a lot of botanists are very slow hikers because we stop every second, like bend down and are looking at the plant. So it's like a pace I'm able to keep up with pretty well. But I've been so fortunate to have amazing collaborators that have been supportive and, and students as well. And if there's something I can't quite get to, usually on the team, there's something somebody else can get to. And we really do this as a team effort. And so I think that's one of the major lessons there.
Well, it's really brave and it's wonderful. And I think my producer commented, that it's anyone who has passion and purpose in life. Let's see, what did he put it? 100%. It all begins and ends with passion and purpose. So
Yeah,
such an inspiration. And you are. And how do you try to impart these kinds of lessons to the young people you're working with in your labs and teaching?
yeah. I think the way I try and impart these lessons is through just being really candid. There were some of the critics' reviews on my book was that I was disarmingly honest because I tell the good and the dirty in my story. I mean, I talk about the incredible frustration, the incredible pain I've dealt with, but also the incredible joy. And I think that's really important because we can't just brush aside the challenges and have it all be roses, right? Because it's not. And so I think through sharing those examples has been useful in helping my students kind of understand, what they can do and what their potentials are.
Because it shows, I mean, it's up close and personal what you're dealing with if they see you on an expedition or, you're telling them what you've gone through and you do it in the book. That's really a great lesson.
Yeah.
There you are in a lab, I assume.
Actually, this is the classroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite lessons. This is in my botanical medicine and health course I teach at Emory, and
That's
this is also
undergrad. You teach that. That's an undergrad class.
it's an upper level 400
Okay.
level undergraduate class. Most of the students are destined to go off to medical school in this class, but we get into the mechanisms of how medicinal plants work. And in this particular image, I'm demonstrating how different botanical laxatives work, believe it or not. So I'm showing them differences with these clear glass flask is how what the absorptive potential is of different types of botanical ingredients, because there are two types of laxatives. One that's bulk forming, kind of creates more space in the gut and kind of spreads things out, and another that's stimulant that acts on your tissues and your intestines. And so I really love bringing in examples and a lot of trial and error. And in a normal year, when we're not in the midst of COVID, we do tastings of different plants. We, try out the miracle fruit and see how the addition of something acidic like lemon turns it into this amazingly sweet concoction. We make skin balms and do all kinds of fun kind of, lab type things, but in a regular classroom setting. So it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. And what made you start your podcast? And tell us about the name and what the name means and what you talk about.
Yeah, so Foodie Pharmacology came out of this amazing opportunity that I had a number of years ago, where I was asked to be a guest on a National Geographic show. And it was called Origins, and the episode I was on is called, the Origins of Medicine. And so I met this great producer team during the show, and they're like, wow, we want to do some sort of TV show with you. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I wasn't really known still, not that I'm known now, but, it's hard to get your own TV show. So I said, you know what, let's start with a podcast. And, it's co-created with Rob Cohen and Christine Roth, and they're just a fabulous couple, fabulous producers, and they've really helped to shape this. It started off with me kind of giving highlights from different lectures I gave in class, but since then, and we're in our third season, we have new episodes every week. We've had amazing guests. One of our guests just from last year just won the Nobel Prize for his work on capsaicin and pain receptors in the mouth. We've had award-winning authors, just amazing scientists, not just from the US, but from all over the world. And, we dive into the complexities of food and medicine and how culture impacts the ways that we interact with nature. So it's a lot of fun, and I love it because I get to meet so many interesting people, as I'm sure you do also, Rose, with your new podcast. That's the best part of it, right?
Yeah, it's really amazing people. I think Stefan has prepared a clip for us to listen to from your podcast. So
great.
Hey, fellow foodies, you've got a tune in this week. I'm speaking with Dr. Kozlowski about functional medicine. Hey, Peter.
How's it going?
Great. What are you going to share with us?
I'm going to share my book, Unfunk Your Gut. We are going to talk gut health. We're going to talk the secret to your gut health, the gut-brain connection. We're going to talk about different diets and what things you can do, and just get an understanding of how important your gut is to your health in preventing chronic disease or treating chronic disease.
Okay,
that's great. Yeah, and that's the episode we have running this week. If anyone's interested, it's a lot of fun. Dr. Koz has some really inspirational tidbits of wisdom on how to use food as medicine.
So we're back to the gut, right?
Yeah, we're back to the gut. How did I start talking about laxatives on the show? I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask you a question that I always like to ask my guests, because when this hashtag started, it started with people now, sort of naming other women that they admire, and either they could be past, people in their past, they could be colleagues. So let me ask you, who are your 3 women to follow? And tell me why.
Yeah, I'll start with one. I think one would be, a woman that's been a mentor of mine since I was a college student. She's the woman that really showed me what was possible She's both the MD and PhD that trained in a time when that wasn't very common to happen. And she is now the creator and leader of the center where I work at Emory. It's Dr. Michelle Lample. Also, in addition to her amazing leadership work, she's also an amazing scientist that studies the origins of human growth and bone development. And she continues to be just an incredible mentor to me even today.
That's terrific. So important to have great mentors.
Yeah.
And is this, this is from her research.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But she's on Netflix too. I mean, she's amazing.
Oh, yes.
really
Look her up.
amazing.
Yeah. And who would you say is a second woman to follow for you?
I'm a huge fan of a woman that is a contemporary of mine. Her name is Dr. Nadja Chek, and is an amazing woman in natural products. I was actually on a group call with her for like 7 hours today for an NIH call on our a large cohort of scientists that are working on herbal safety. And she's, kind of a mass spectrometry whiz woman. She's just does amazing work with the complexities of botanicals, and is someone I really, really admire. I really admire her work.
Thank you. We will, let's see. Here she is.
Yeah.
And she's at UNC Greensboro.
Yeah, she's a endowed chair at UNC Greensboro, and leads a really great research group, and is doing an amazing job training next generation of scientists to study plants. And I think that's incredible.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in the same sphere with her.
Same sphere, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another woman to follow that we can.
I'll give you one other contemporary, but a different angle of botanical research, and that's Dr. Ina van der Broek. And I'll actually be speaking with her next week at New York Botanical Gardens. She's hosting me for a talk there, and she's an amazing ethnobotanist, has done just incredible work in studying, Caribbean ethnobotany, and also urban ethnobotany, and what happens when people immigrate from other parts of the world to places like New York City, and how does that affect their practice of healthcare? Do they bring plants with them? Are they using plants that are imported? And how all of that kind of goes into this merged system of medicine, intertwined with Western medicine. And she just does amazing work, and is actually one of the co-advisors for one of my former students that trained in my lab. And I couldn't have put my former student into better hands. So I also a really, really great woman to watch doing fascinating work in the field.
Is this a virtual event at the New York Botanical Gardens, or?
It is, yes.
It is. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's one of my favorite places to go.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you again. I'm so honored you could be with us and give us this time. And I encourage everybody to get your book or listen to it on Audible, because I'm sure it's delightful. And we're gonna. I usually announce who my next guest is. I'm gonna leave that to the next few days. But I will be sure to put out a woman to follow, so everyone can follow them.
Great.
And let's see, can you show us a copy of your book again? Can you show us?
Oh, absolutely. I have it right here.
Okay.
The Plant Hunter. Let me see if I can get it right on the camera. Yeah. And it has these beautiful, some of the plants on here are just amazing. We have St. John's wort, we have pepper tree, beautyberry. And, one thing we didn't get into, if you'll allow me the luxury of just doing one other thing I want to show everyone, because I haven't shown this off yet. Okay. I work with the Alleles company. I just took off my leg. So it's like the Alleles company.
This is in your last chapter. Am I right? Or
yeah.
One of your
they created this gorgeous design. This is a prosthetic cover. It's alleles.ca. Let's see if I can hold but it's inspired by the book. And it's called The Plant Hunter.
Oh,
It
that's
has
amazing.
chemicals that my
That's really-
lab has discovered in plants and some of our important plants we study with. So I can now describe my book just by pointing at my leg, and I love this so much. So I had to show that off.
That is very terrific. Have you worked with them before, and they presented this as a gift to you?
Yes,
This-
I've been
yeah.
a long-standing customer of theirs, and you know, they're just. I think that what's been amazing about what they've done is they've really brought a sense of beauty and a sense of remove that sense of shame that I've always held since childhood around my prosthetic, the sense of trying to hide it. This is actually my prosthetist, Will Hallbrick at Faru Prosthetics. So he makes all the major hardware that goes in my leg, and then he gets the covers from Alleles in Canada. And he is fabulous. He's been my leading leg man since college.
That's terrific. That's really good to have to know somebody that long and have him, see you evolve in your, I guess, awareness and willingness to share what you're doing.
Thank you.
I mean, how you've come to terms with this. So thank you. Really
Yeah,
inspiring
thank you.
story. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will be sure to put out your woman to follow, and I will be following you, and I hope you
Great.
continue to follow what I'm doing here. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rose. It's been
thank you
great
so
fun.
much. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. You can stay with us for
Okay.
just afterwards. We'll just say hello. Okay. Off stage. Okay. Thank you.